My name is Chloe Marie, and I'm 33 years old. For nearly 6 years, I poured everything I had into building my tech company, an endeavor I nurtured in complete silence. Tonight, at my cousin's engagement dinner, in a swanky rooftop restaurant in downtown Chicago, that silence is about to end in the most unexpected way. Growing up in a stately brick home in Oak Park, a leafy suburb west of Chicago, meant living under strict expectations. My father, Dr. Gregory Marie, wasn't just a surgeon. He was the surgeon the one other physicians consulted when cases became too complicated. My mother, Cynthia, was a corporate attorney whose courtroom victories had become family lore. And then there was my older sister, Emily, the firstborn, the perfect daughter. She was the family's star, following in Dad's footsteps, without a single misstep, already making a name for herself as a cardiologist. Our family dinners were never just meals. They were performance reviews. Mom would start most evenings with her signature opener. "So what did everyone accomplish today?" Emily always had something impressive. A published research paper, a patient she'd saved with her steady hands. My answers always fell short, a new app feature. I was testing a bug I'd squashed after hours of coding. At 15, I was bursting with pride one evening when I announced I'd built my first website over a single weekend. "That's nice," Chloe Mom said, her smile-tight eyes already flicking back to Emily. "But shouldn't you be prepping for the debate team finals? That's what colleges look for, something real." Dad would nod along, then turn to Emily to ask about her hospital rotation, his excitement palpable. The message was clear: computers were toys. Real achievement was measured in lives saved or court victories won. My sanctuary became my room, the only place where I could let my mind wander without judgment. I spent hours lost in HTML, Python, and JavaScript tutorials, while Emily's framed diplomas crowded our family's hallway. At 16, I built an app that helped organize my school's chaotic annual fundraiser. The event coordinator was thrilled. "Your daughter has real talent," she told my parents. But Mom brushed it aside. "Chloe has many interests," she said, her tone polite and final. "But law school is still her future." I wasn't even considering law school, but they had already decided my path, and I was expected to follow it. My breakthrough moment came during junior year. I entered a regional coding competition with an inventory system I'd built from scratch. I was determined to compete, even though it meant skipping Emily's white coat ceremony. "You're really going to miss this for some computer contest?" Dad asked, disappointment dripping from every word. "Emily's worked her entire life for this." I went alone and won first place. The judges, actual engineers, told me I had a rare gift. I came home that night, clutching my trophy, only to find the house filled with relatives, celebrating Emily's new lab coat. Dad offered a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before turning back to Emily's toast. That night, I promised myself I would build something they couldn't ignore, or dismiss something so undeniable they'd have no choice but to see me. When senior year came, I quietly applied to state universities known for their computer science programs instead of the Ivy League schools my parents insisted upon. When I was accepted to Illinois Tech with a full merit scholarship, my father reacted like I'd told him I was joining the circus. "You're wasting your potential," he said, every word a dagger. "You're a Marie Chloe. You should be at Yale or Stanford." My mother's disapproval was a quiet storm. "You're throwing everything away on a field that won't respect you," she said, shaking her head. "Computers are for hobbyists. Chloe, not for someone with your intelligence." Emily tried to mediate, insisting it was just a phase. "Let her get it out of her system," she told Mom. "She'll come back to the real world soon enough." But I didn't come back. I left for Illinois Tech that fall, carrying the weight of my family's disappointment, but also a flicker of excitement. For the first time, I could dive into what I loved without constant judgment. At Illinois Tech, I wasn't the underachieving Marie daughter. I was Chloe, the student professors singled out for her knack for solving problems in ways no one else had thought of. In my second year, I met Noah Carter, a fellow coding enthusiast in my advanced algorithms class. We clicked immediately, and our late-night conversations soon turned into a shared dream to build a platform that could fix the broken healthcare communication systems we both saw growing up. Noah's father had suffered a preventable medical error that left him with permanent damage. My best friend from high school, Clara, had been misdiagnosed for years because no one communicated properly. Noah and I spent hours sketching ideas on napkins and whiteboards, envisioning a system that could save lives and restore trust in healthcare. By our junior year, we had a prototype. We entered entrepreneurship competitions, winning enough money to file patents and incorporate the company CareConnect. One professor, Dr. Harper, became our first advisor. She saw the potential in our scrappy beta and helped us land our first client, a small chain of outpatient clinics that gave us a shot. Back home, my family never asked about my progress. At holidays, relatives still asked when I'd figure things out, or if I'd thought about getting a real job. "Computers are fun, Chloe," my uncle said, once, his tone half joking. "But when are you going to settle down? Do something important, like Emily?" I learned to smile and deflect. Let them think I was just playing around with code. I knew the truth. By the time I graduated, Noah and I had a small team working from a cramped co-working space in Chicago's West Loop. We lived on coffee and ramen, taking side gigs to pay rent. CareConnect slowly started to grow, winning contracts with community hospitals that needed better communication tools. The work was grueling, but it was ours. That summer, when I called home to tell them I wouldn't be at Emily's graduation party, our platform was about to launch at its first major hospital. I braced for their reaction. Dad's sigh of disappointment crackled through the phone. "Someday, Chloe," he said, "you'll realize there's a difference between a hobby and a profession." I hung up feeling gutted. But that night, as I watched our software go live and saw the impact firsthand, fewer errors, more patient trust, I knew I was exactly where I belonged. This was just the beginning, and deep down, I knew it was a foundation no one could shake. College graduation felt like both a finish line and the start of something entirely new. As I packed up my tiny off-campus apartment, my parents were too busy planning Emily's engagement party to notice. They'd always been better at celebrating Emily's milestones than mine. But that was okay. I didn't need them to see my potential, to know it was there. I moved into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in Chicago's South Loop with Noah. The place smelled like fresh paint and stale coffee, but it was ours. We carved out an office space in the corner of the living room, two mismatched desks pushed together, a whiteboard covered in scribbles, and a pot of wilting succulents that I insisted on keeping. It felt like home in a way my childhood house never did. We poured ourselves into CareConnect. Mornings started at 6 with endless coffee runs, and nights ended at 2 with exhausted laughter over takeout containers and lines of code that refused to behave. It was messy and exhilarating. Every new contract felt like a small victory, and every setback just made us more determined. In those early days, our families knew next to nothing about what we were doing. My parents never asked, and Noah's family, though more curious, didn't fully understand why we'd risk everything on an untested idea. To them, the future was about job security, not chasing a dream with no safety net. But for us, that risk was exactly what made it worth it. A year in, we hired our first developer, Julia. She was brilliant and driven, the kind of person who thrived on caffeine and optimism. Her energy was infectious, and together, we started turning our rough prototype into something polished, something real. Our client list grew slowly but steadily, a handful of hospitals here, a clinic there. Word of mouth became our greatest asset. Doctors who saw how CareConnect reduced errors and improved patient care couldn't help but share the news. But even as CareConnect gained traction, my family's silence remained a constant presence. Whenever I visited for the holidays, the first question at the dinner table was always about Emily's research or her upcoming wedding. My role in the family had become clear. I was the cautionary tale, the reminder of what happened when you didn't follow the family blueprint. One December night, after an especially draining visit home, I called Noah from my childhood bedroom. "I feel like I'm invisible," I admitted, my voice low. "Like no matter how far we get, they'll never see me." He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe they don't have to," he said finally. "Maybe this isn't about them at all." I let his words sink in. Maybe he was right. I didn't build Care Connect to prove anything to them. I built it because I knew there was a better way, because people's lives depended on it. That winter, as snow blanketed the city and our little apartment turned drafty and cold, we hit our first real turning point. A small angel investment came through enough to let us upgrade from a corner of our apartment to a tiny co-working space downtown. It wasn't much, but it felt like a luxury, big windows, decent coffee, and the chance to work alongside other scrappy founders who understood the hustle. Noah's father came to visit once, standing in the doorway of our new office with a mixture of pride and skepticism. "You're really doing it," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "Your mom would have been proud." His mother had died a few years earlier, and I knew how much this work meant to him. That quiet acknowledgement was enough to carry me through the coldest winter nights. In the spring, we secured a pilot program with a regional medical center. It was our biggest break yet, dozens of hospitals, thousands of patients. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure nearly broke me. There were nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat, terrified that we'd fail, and all those lives would be at risk. But Noah was my anchor. "We're here because we belong here," he'd say, his hand steady on mine. "This isn't luck, Chloe. It's everything we've worked for." At the same time, a new challenge emerged: an aggressive competitor, Medilink, who saw us as an upstart threat. They had more funding and a slick marketing team. Suddenly, hospitals were being courted by promises of features that didn't even exist yet. I was furious. How could we compete with that? One rainy afternoon, after a particularly grueling negotiation call, Noah found me at the window of our office, staring out at the city lights. "You're not going to let them beat us, are you?" he asked, a quiet challenge in his voice. "Not a chance," I said. And I meant it. We doubled down. We worked through weekends and holidays, refining our code, talking to doctors to understand their real pain points. We didn't have the biggest team or the flashiest pitch, but we had something Medilink couldn't fake: genuine empathy and a product that actually worked. By summer, the difference was starting to show. Our client retention was near perfect. Hospitals that tried Care Connect didn't just like it, they loved it. Word spread, and suddenly we were in talks with a major healthcare network that would take us nationwide. It felt like a dream, but it was real. The months of ramen and cold coffee had led us here. Through it all, my family remained oblivious. Emily's wedding planning dominated every conversation, her name always on their lips. I stopped trying to insert myself into those discussions. I didn't need to anymore, because every time a hospital signed on, every time a nurse told us we were making her job easier, I felt it in my bones. I was enough. Still, there was one moment I'd never forget. At Emily's engagement party, just before dessert, my mother pulled me aside. "Chloe," she said, her voice low and controlled, "Emily says there's an opening at her hospital's IT department. It's a respectable position, and I think it would be good for you." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "I'm not looking for a job, Mom," I said as calmly as I could. "I'm building a company, and we're just getting started." She didn't understand, and maybe she never would. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain or justify myself. My life wasn't about their understanding anymore. It was about the impact we were making, and that was something no one could take away. By the end of that summer, Care Connect had grown beyond our wildest expectations. Our pilot program with the regional medical center was a resounding success. Rates dropped, patient satisfaction soared, and we had the data to prove it. The once skeptical doctors now became our most vocal advocates, singing our praises to colleagues across the state. But success didn't come without its price. Noah and I were working ourselves to the bone. 12-hour days were the norm. Weekends vanished into a haze of coding sprints and strategy meetings. There were nights I'd fall asleep at my desk, only to be jolted awake by a new idea or a sudden panic about a missing feature. And yet I loved it. Every line of code felt like a rebellion against the limits everyone else had placed on me. Every time I heard a nurse say, "This makes my job easier," it was a small victory that kept me going. The turning point came on a humid August morning when an email from Horizon Health Technologies pinged in my inbox. I read it 3 times, my hand shaking with excitement. Horizon was the biggest healthcare software company in the country. An acquisition by them would mean everything. I called Noah immediately. They want to talk, I said breathlessly. They're interested in a potential partnership, or maybe more. Noah let out a low whistle. That's huge. But are we ready? I paused, feeling the weight of the question. We've built something real, Noah. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Our first meeting with Horizon's team was set for the following week. I didn't tell my family about it. I knew exactly how that conversation would go, another lecture about getting my head out of the clouds. So instead, I threw myself into preparation, determined to prove to everyone, including myself, that I belonged in that room. But there was an unexpected twist. 2 days before the meeting, Noah and I got a call from an unlikely source, Dr. Layla Porter, a respected hospital administrator who'd once dismissed our platform as a nice student project. She was calling to apologize. I underestimated you two, she said candidly. I've seen the numbers from your pilot program and I was wrong. We'd like to sign on. It was a small moment, but it felt enormous. Validation didn't have to come from family. It could come from people who saw the real impact of what we'd built. When the day of the Horizon meeting arrived, I put on my sharpest blazer and took a deep breath. We met in a sleek glass tower in downtown Chicago, where the air smelled of fresh coffee and expensive cologne. Horizon's team was older, polished, and intimidating in their tailored suits and clipped words. They spoke in polished phrases about synergies and scalability, but I knew what they were really asking. Could we deliver, Noah? And I didn't flinch. We showed them everything, our code, our user data, the stories from hospitals who had trusted us. For once, I didn't feel like I had to prove I belonged. I knew I did. After the meeting, as we walked down Michigan Avenue, the city buzzing around us, Noah turned to me, a slow smile spreading across his face. You realize what just happened in there, right? He said. We held our own, I said. And we had. But even as Horizon loomed on the horizon, no pun intended, there were other battles brewing. MediLink, our competitor, wasn't taking our rise lightly. They launched an aggressive marketing campaign, positioning themselves as the only real solution in the market. Some of our smaller clients wavered under the pressure. Noah and I worked double time personally, visiting each client to reassure them. We're here for you, I said again and again. We're not going anywhere. Still, the stress took its toll. One night after another grueling day of negotiations and strategy calls, I collapsed onto my couch and burst into tears. I wasn't sure if I was crying from exhaustion fear or sheer frustration. Rachel, my best friend from high school, was the only person who seemed to see through my facade. She'd moved back to Chicago that year and had a knack for showing up with pizza and zero judgment. You look like you haven't slept in a week, she said, plopping down beside me. I probably haven't, I admitted, managing a wry smile. But it's worth it. She studied me for a long moment. You're building something incredible, Chloe. Don't let them make you forget that. Those words stayed with me in the days that followed, because even as the horizon got closer, the doubts lingered. I still hadn't told my family about any of it. They believed I was working in some entry-level IT support job, just another aimless millennial with a dream that didn't pay the bills. The final straw came at Emily's wedding shower, a glittering event at the Four Seasons, where every conversation was about the perfect honeymoon destinations or Emily's medical research breakthroughs. My mother pulled me aside between speeches, her hand firm on my elbow. Chloe, your father and I have been talking. Emily's hospital has an opening in administration. It's time to think about something stable. Mom, I said carefully, I'm not looking for that kind of job. I have my own company. We're in talks with Horizon. It's going well. She blinked, confusion flickering across her features. Horizon, what are you talking about? But before I could explain, she was already moving on, distracted by another well-wisher. I realized in that moment that I couldn't wait for them to see me. I had to see myself. The day of the Horizon dinner, a formal event to discuss next steps in our potential partnership, I chose a simple navy dress and a quiet confidence that I'd earned the hard way. Noah and I walked in together, a united front. At our table was a woman named Sophia, Horizon's Director of Strategic Acquisitions. She had a calm, almost regal presence and sharp eyes that missed nothing. As we exchanged pleasantries, I noticed her glancing at me with a flicker of recognition, but she didn't say anything. The conversation flowed easily, but underneath it all, I could feel the weight of the moment. Later that night, after Noah and I left the dinner, he turned to me, his eyes bright. "She knows Chloe," he said quietly. "Sophia knows exactly who you are and what you've built." For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide. I didn't feel like I had to shrink or explain. I was Chloe Marie, co-founder of Care Connect, and I was ready to be seen on my own terms. Sophia's knowing gaze from that dinner stuck with me. It wasn't just that she recognized me, it was that she saw me. Not as the underachieving daughter my family pitied, or the scrappy founder hustling from a co-working space, but as someone who had built something real, something that mattered. The week after the dinner, Sophia reached out to Noah and me directly. She invited us to Horizon's headquarters, no intermediaries this time. As I walked through their sprawling downtown campus, a glass and steel testament to polished success, I felt a flicker of something I couldn't name. Pride, trepidation, maybe both. Sophia met us in a bright, modern conference room overlooking the Chicago River. She was as poised and focused as ever, but her smile was warm. "We've been watching Care Connect for a while," she said, her tone direct but respectful. "Your data speaks for itself. We'd like to discuss a full acquisition." Noah shot me a quick glance, equal parts excitement and wariness. I took a steady breath. "We're open to that conversation," I said, my voice calm. "But we're not just looking for a payday. We built this because we believe in it." Sophia's lips curved in what I could only describe as approval. "Good," she said. "That's exactly what we're hoping for." The negotiations moved quickly. Horizon's offer was life-changing, 8 figures, enough to erase every financial worry I'd ever had, and then some. But more importantly, they promised to let us lead Care Connect's integration, preserving our mission and our vision. Noah and I spent long nights weighing the pros and cons, our whiteboard covered in scribbles and equations. We were on the cusp of something enormous. Meanwhile, my family remained in the dark. Emily's wedding loomed closer, each family gathering another reminder of how I was still the outlier. My mother's polite questions about my job situation had become so routine they barely registered. My father's suggestions, networking with Emily's colleagues, settling down, were like background noise. It was at Emily's final wedding fitting, of all places, that the facade began to crack. I was there mostly as moral support, helping her into the delicate lace dress that made her eyes glow with excitement. In the middle of the bustling bridal salon, Emily turned to me, her expression softening. "Chloe," she said quietly, "I don't know what you're doing these days, but you seem happy." I swallowed hard, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "I am," I said simply. She nodded almost shyly. "I hope. I hope you know that's enough, even if Mom and Dad don't always see it." It was a rare moment of honesty between us, and it stayed with me long after I left the fitting. A few days later, Sophia invited me for coffee, just the two of us. She wanted to talk through the final details of the acquisition, she said. But, as I sat across from her in the airy cafe, it became clear this was more than business. "Your family doesn't know, do they?" she asked, her gaze sharp and kind at the same time. I hesitated, then shook my head. "They think I'm floundering, I guess. They don't know about Care Connect, about any of it." Sophia leaned back, considering. "I understand. My parents still think I work in computers, like I'm fixing laptops, not negotiating multi-million-dollar deals." She paused. "But Chloe, you deserve to be seen, even if it's hard." Her words echoed in my head that night as I walked home through the quiet streets. For years I'd kept my success a secret, a private rebellion. But maybe it was time to let the truth out. That chance came sooner than I expected. Emily's wedding was set for a golden September afternoon at a lakeside estate in Wisconsin. The whole event was a showcase of picture-perfect elegance, white roses, champagne toasts, and carefully curated smiles. My mother was in her element, gliding from table to table, her voice low and charming. I found myself seated at a table with a mix of family and distant acquaintances. doctors, lawyers, the usual crowd. Conversation flowed easily around me, a river of polite small talk. I kept my head down, sipping my wine, and thinking about Horizon's final offer, set to close the following week. Then, just as dessert was being served, Sophia appeared at our table. She wore a simple navy dress and a calm confidence that made her seem untouchable. She greeted everyone warmly, but when her eyes met mine, there was a flicker of recognition. I saw the moment it clicked for her, my name, the rumors swirling around Horizon, the quiet woman at the edge of every family dinner. She didn't say anything right away, just smiled and turned the conversation to Emily's honeymoon plans. But later, as the music swelled and the dance floor filled, she found me again. "Chloe," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough to reach me over the music. "You're the Chloe Marie, aren't you, from Care Connect?" I nodded, my heart racing. Her smile widened. "I thought so. Your team's been on my radar for years." I didn't know what to say. Around us, the world was all laughter and dancing, but in that moment, it felt like everything had stopped. "Do they know?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Not yet." She gave my hand a light squeeze. "Then let them see you. The real you. Not for them, do it for you." Her words were a challenge, but also a gift. As I watched Emily and her new husband twirl under the fairy lights, I realized I was done hiding. I wouldn't diminish my own story to protect their comfort anymore. The next day, I called a family brunch at a quiet cafe near Millennium Park. My parents were curious, wary, why was I calling a family meeting? When we sat down, I took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you," I said, my voice steady. "I've built a company. It's called Care Connect, and next week we're closing an acquisition deal that will change everything." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's eyes widened, my father's mouth fell open. Emily just watched me, her expression unreadable. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch under their stunned silence. I let it sit there, heavy and real. "I know it's not what you expected of me," I continued, "but it's mine. And I'm proud of it. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need them to approve. I just needed to say it out loud for myself." In that moment, I realized something that would carry me forward. I had built more than a company. I had built a life that was finally completely mine. My confession at that brunch left a quiet ripple of shock in its wake. My father cleared his throat, his voice rough, as he said, "Chloe, this is serious, a company, an acquisition." The word seemed foreign on his tongue, as if he couldn't quite believe it. I held his gaze steady. "Yes, Dad. It's real. And it's mine." My mother blinked, her perfectly manicured hand coming to rest on her pearl necklace. "Chloe, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped." I almost laughed. "Helped? You spent years telling me computers were a hobby, that what I was doing was a phase I'd outgrow. I didn't need help. I needed you to believe in me. And when you didn't, I had to believe in myself." Emily was silent, but her eyes were soft, her hand reaching out to touch mine under the table. She squeezed once, and that small gesture was enough to ground me. My father leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "What does this mean for you, Chloe? For your future?" "It means," I said slowly, choosing each word with care, "that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." The waiter arrived to take our order, a brief pause that gave us all a moment to catch our breath. As he left, my father spoke again. "Tell me about this Care Connect. I want to understand." So I told them. I told them about the nights I spent coding until dawn, the hospitals that had trusted us, the lives we'd changed. I told them about Noah and our team, about the challenges and the victories. I told them about the offer from Horizon, how it would take Care Connect nationwide, how it would change everything. As I spoke, I saw something shift in my father's eyes. He wasn't fully there, yet old habits die hard. But he was listening. Really listening. For my mother, it was harder. She kept glancing at my father, as if waiting for him to decide how they should feel. But Emily leaned in closer, her voice low but certain. "I'm proud of you, Chloe," she said. "I hope you know that." The words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. When we finally stood to leave, my father pulled me into a stiff, awkward hug. We'll talk more," he said. I want to understand this better. For the first time, I believed him. Back in my apartment that night, I felt both raw and relieved. I called Rachel, who let out a long whistle. About damn time, she said. How do you feel? Like I just walked through fire, I admitted. But I'm still standing. A few days later, Horizon's final acquisition offer arrived in my inbox. 220 million. My heart skipped a beat as I read the numbers. But it wasn't just the money. It was the promise that Noah and I would stay on as leaders of the innovation division, steering CareConnect into its next chapter. I forwarded the offer to Noah with a simple message: let's do this. We signed the papers in a sleek Horizon boardroom, the skyline of Chicago stretching out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sophia was there, her calm presence a steadying force. Congratulations, she said as we set our pens down. You've built something extraordinary. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. It's only the beginning. The press release went out the next day. For the first time, my name was there in black and white. Chloe Marie, co-founder of CareConnect. No more hiding, no more pretending. The story spread like wildfire. Industry blogs, tech podcasts, even local news outlets. My phone buzzed with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old classmates, distant cousins, friends who'd once rolled their eyes at my computer hobby. They all wanted to congratulate me, to claim a piece of my story. But the most surprising message came from Emily. Mom and Dad are still adjusting, she wrote. But I want you to know I see you, Chloe. I always have. That night, I sat on my balcony, overlooking the city, lights, a glass of wine in hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt settled. Not because my family had finally seen me, but because I had learned to see myself. The following weekend, Horizon hosted a launch event for CareConnect's new division. It was a glamorous affair, champagne canapes, and a string quartet playing in the background. Noah and I stood together, our heads held high, as Sophia introduced us to the room. This is Chloe Marie, she said, her voice carrying over the soft hum of conversation. She's the reason we're all here tonight. People turned to look at me, some curious, some impressed. I felt the weight of their gazes, but it didn't crush me. It lifted me. After the speeches, Noah pulled me aside. You realize, he said, his eyes bright, we did this. No matter what anyone says, this is ours. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words in my bones. Yeah, I said. We did. But the real test came the following Sunday. My parents invited me to dinner at their house, a quiet evening, just us. I wore a simple black dress, my hair pulled back in a low ponytail. I wasn't there to impress them. I was there to be myself. The conversation was hesitant, at first, old patterns hard to break. My father asked questions about CareConnect's future. My mother fussed over the roast chicken. But slowly, something shifted. My father wanted to see the platform, so I pulled out my tablet and showed him. He asked real questions, not just polite ones. My mother watched quietly, her brow furrowed, but her eyes curious. At one point, she reached across the table to touch my hand. Chloe, she said, her voice soft, I didn't realize how much this meant to you, how hard you worked. I swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I know, I said. But it's okay. I know now. After dinner, as I walked to my car, Emily caught up to me. You're different, she said, studying me. More sure of yourself. I had to be, I said simply. For me. We stood there for a moment, the late summer air cool and still. Then she hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Chloe, she said again, her voice fierce. Always. Driving home, I thought about how far I'd come. About the girl who once hid in her bedroom, coding by lamplight, and the woman who had built something that mattered. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. But I was done hiding. The next day, as I walked into Horizon's headquarters, I felt a quiet thrill in my chest. This was my life, my path. And for the first time, I wasn't walking it in the shadows. I was ready for whatever came next. 6 months after the acquisition, the world looked different from my office window. From this height, the river was a ribbon of light, cutting through the city, the skyline a promise of endless possibility. The Horizon office buzzed around me, developers, product managers, and strategists, collaborating to bring Care Connect to hospitals across the country and beyond. Yet even in this gleaming building, with my name on every internal memo, I kept my desk simple: a small plant, a framed photo of Noah and me at our first office, and a sticky note that read, "Remember why." A reminder that no matter how high I climbed my roots, were the girl who built something from nothing in a cramped apartment. One Thursday morning, as I was finalizing a partnership proposal for a European hospital network, Sophia knocked on my door. She wore her usual calm confidence, but today her eyes were bright. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Of course," I said, pushing my laptop aside. She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "I wanted you to hear it from me. We're getting inquiries from international health ministries. They're seeing what Care Connect has done here and want to pilot it in their own systems. We're talking global impact, Chloe." My heart raced. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it sink in. Global impact. The thing I'd dreamed about in quiet moments when no one believed in me. Sophia's smile widened. "You deserve to see this. You've earned it." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady but soft. I meant it. As she left, I sat there for a long moment, staring at the skyline. There was a time when I would have rushed to call my parents, desperate for them to see this milestone, to hear the pride in their voices. But now I realized it didn't matter if they understood it fully. What mattered was that I did. That weekend, I invited Emily and her husband over for dinner. The night was casual homemade pasta, a bottle of good red wine, laughter that spilled over the edge of the table. Emily's husband asked about my work, his curiosity genuine, and for once I didn't downplay it. "It's changing everything," I said, my voice quiet but certain. "Not just for me, for people who need it most." Emily caught my eye and smiled. "I see that now. And I see you." Those words meant more than any of the headlines or congratulatory messages I'd gotten in the past few months. The next day, I met Rachel for coffee in our favorite little corner cafe. She'd watched me go from late-night coding marathons to million-dollar deals, always my fiercest cheerleader. So she said, sipping her latte, "You're finally letting the world see you." I laughed, shaking my head. "Not the world, just the parts of it that matter." "Good," she said, her smile wide. "Because you're too good to hide." The following week, I flew to New York for a healthcare innovation summit. I was slated to be the closing speaker, a first for me. The thought of standing on that stage, sharing my story with thousands, made my heart pound. But as I looked at my reflection in the hotel mirror that morning, I realized I wasn't the same woman who had once tiptoed around her own success. That afternoon, I stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the room filled with faces I didn't know. But I took a deep breath and began. "I'm Chloe Marie," I said. "And I co-founded Care Connect because I believed there had to be a better way. I built it in the shadows, unsure if the world would ever see it. But I didn't do it to prove anything to anyone. I did it because I knew people deserved better. And so did I." As I spoke, I shared the story of late nights and setbacks of my family's doubt and my own quiet conviction. I talked about the hospitals we'd helped and the lives we'd touched. And I ended with the most important truth I'd learned along the way. Success isn't about recognition. I said, my voice clear and strong. It's about impact. It's about building something that matters. And it's about the freedom to be seen on your own terms. When I finished, the applause was deafening. But what mattered most wasn't the clapping. It was the feeling in my chest, a quiet, steady beat that said, "You've come this far. And you're not done yet." Afterward, as I stepped off the stage, Sophia was there, her eyes bright. "You were incredible," she said. "The world needs to hear more voices like yours." I smiled. "Thank you. But I think the most important voice to hear is the one inside me." And she's finally speaking loud and clear. Back in Chicago, I fell into a new rhythm. Care Connect was expanding overseas, and I was mentoring young women in tech girls like I'd once been, unsure if their dreams could ever matter. I told them the truth that sometimes the world won't understand you, but that doesn't mean you're wrong, and that the only validation that really matters is the one you give yourself. On a rainy afternoon in November, my father called me out of the blue. "Chloe," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I read an article about you today about the acquisition and the platform. I I didn't realize how much you'd built. I know, I said gently. But it's okay. I didn't build it for you to understand. I built it because I needed to. There was a pause. I'm proud of you, he said finally. I hope you know that. For a moment, tears welled in my eyes, not because I needed his pride, but because I was free to accept it without it defining me. As the year wound down, I stood at my office window one evening, the city lights glowing like a promise. Noah joined me, 2 mugs of hot chocolate in his hands. To the next chapter, he asked, his grin wide. To the next chapter, I agreed, taking a sip and savoring the sweetness. Because I knew now the chapters never really end. They evolve, grow, and twist in unexpected ways. And each one is another chance to write a life that feels like yours. So here I am, Chloe Marie, no longer the girl who hid behind screens or the woman who needed her family's approval to breathe. I am the founder who built something real, the friend who learned to trust again, the daughter who no longer measures her worth by anyone else's standards. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt like your dreams were too small or too fragile to share, I want you to know they're not. They're yours. Build them. Fight for them. Let the world see you, but most of all, let yourself see you. Because in the end, true success isn't about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. If my story resonated with you today, I'd love to hear your moments of self-discovery and quiet triumph. Share them below. Let's celebrate each step we take to define our own paths. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share it with them. Remember, your dreams are worth the fight.